Hi there. In this lecture we see Magnus Carlsen playing against Veselin Topalov in the 2009 MTEL Masters round 1. So it's an interesting opening variation. D4 for Magnus, we have D5, C4, C6, so very solid semi-Slav. We have bishop G5, H6, and the intention here is just to give up the dark square bishop. When we do this, we're actually potentially increasing the pressure on the light squares later, which this bishop will be irrelevant to, and we've got basically an extra piece which could probe light squares. So we can look forward to Magnus maybe celebrating the light squares in this game now. We see E3, knight D7, bishop D3, D takes, bishop takes C4, G6. The bishop is still blunted on G7 by this pawn chain here, but we have E4, black castles, E5. So it seems as though, well, hold on, the bishop, maybe it's hitting E5, maybe later C5 becomes possible. So we'll be looking at that possibility for trying to make use of that bishop without a counterpart, the dark square bishop. We have queen E2, B5, bishop D3, bishop B7. And now bishop E4, rook FD8, rook A to C1, rook A to B8, rook FD1, A6, and now we have H4, which is logical to try and hit the light squares harder. That's our strength here. We've got a light square pressure going on. We have bishop A8. If C5 in this position to try and undermine white's center, well, I can take on B7 and queen E4 with tempo against the rook, and then we get to play D5, and in fact E5 isn't a problem here. E takes, knight takes, black never gets a chance. Queen E8, and then we protect E5, and we've got a very nice position with a small edge. Okay, but bishop A8, maybe C5 was actually preferable to bishop A8 though. That was a preferable continuation. So at least, you know, it was trying to get the bishop to be quite active. Here, rook C2 now, we have rook D to C8. If C5 here, we can take on A8, D5, and let's say C4. D6 is a strong pawn chain with advantage for white. And let's say E takes here, knight takes, queen E6, we can win the exchange, knight C7. That's out of the question for black. And if queen F8, on the light squares we strike E6. Here, knight C7, and we're winning the exchange. We're going to be winning material here. This is pretty nasty for black, because we've got this threat of queen takes E6 check as well. As knight takes E6, we've got multiple threats here. If queen F7, knight takes, yeah, winning the exchange. So anyway, rook D to C8 is played, rook D to C1, queen F8. If C5 right now, bishop takes, rook takes. In fact, there's a different plan here. Our centre does actually crumble here potentially, or does it? We can play knight E4. So C takes is actually prevented. No, it doesn't crumble. We maintain that solidity against that bishop, and we can pop into D6 and undermine C4 with B3. We end up winning that C pawn with advantage. So queen F8 tried. Now in this position, actually Magnus makes actually a mistake. A4. The knight could use A4 usefully in the case of B4. We've actually used up a square, so we've got basically a weakness of the last move, that we've used up potentially valuable square. So just to show, if queen E3, say B4, we use the A4 square and we're clamping C5 quite logically, this would be a nice advantage. Yeah, very nice control of the position on the queen side, and maybe later we play H5. That would be great control on the queen side. So A4 is actually giving black a great opportunity. Another way of seeing this, if C5, which you might think, well, A4 was designed against C5, but the thing is, we can take on A8 here, and then D5. This is going to be good for us. We can take on E6 here, then knight E2. This is fine for us with advantage. So yeah, it's an interesting position. A4 actually gives this opportunity, which was missed by Topalov. B4 was actually a good move here, but C5 was played instead. This is still not good here. B4 is preferable first, then C5. This would have been a way to do it, to try and put pressure on White's pawn chain and justify the bishop, which doesn't have a counterpart. If bishop takes A8, rook takes, we can play D takes, but there is rook takes C5, and black is actually okay here, and at least the bishop's got a bit of pressure now without a solid pawn chain blunting it. But C5 was played instead, and in fact now we have A takes, B5, C takes D4, knight takes D4, bishop takes E4 is actually a mistake. A takes would have been much preferable, more preferable. Bishop takes A8. You can see black's got pressure against E5, and we might have to protect it now. F4, and this is an even position overall. But with bishop takes E4, White's knights are pretty active in the center. We have rook takes, A takes, and now knight C6, which hits the rook and protects E5 a bit. So the rook moves, and now F4. So again, blunting that bishop on G7. And now, after queen A8, we have knight E7 check, king H7. If king F8, we just play rook C8 check, winning the queen. That's unplayable. So the king has to get off the back row. So the light square campaign can be carried on now. Okay, the bishop's got, without a counterpart, it's completely locked in. In fact, our light square pressure, and we've got an extra piece basically to probe light squares, is celebrated. Guess how? For 5 points. Yeah, H5. It's very difficult for black after H5. We have rook A6. If queen E8, we can go with rook C7. Because here, this is a funny line. Queen takes, H takes, F takes. We have queen D2 with that nasty pin on D7. And this will be crushing once we get our piece back. Knight F6 check. And we've got all sorts of great possibilities here, including F5. One of them is F5. If bishop takes F6, E takes F6, here queen D4, this is a super dangerous position for black. We get pawn to F7, we take out E6, we're in a much superior position here with a huge advantage. Worse is E takes F5. What would you play here for 10 points? Yeah, queen takes H6 check for rook H7. So yeah, that would be dangerous. And also queen D4 is actually really dangerous. It has great ideas like queen A7 coming up. If H5, king H2, let's say king H3, putting the king out of harm's way completely, then going on to the attack. What would be the key threats here, do you think, for 5 points? What is white threatening? Yeah, it's actually rook takes G7, and then getting onto the back row. So say B4, rook takes G7, queen onto the back row, and then we're mating. So say bishop takes F6, we have rook F7, and here E takes, this would be a crushing position, queen E7, rook G7, and then F takes is a winning rook and pawn endgame. This is absolutely winning. So these are really fascinating possibilities. After H5, if G takes is quite brutal, guess what we play here for 10 points? We just get a very strong attack. Well, a checkmate sequence, knight G5. So let's say H takes, queen takes, H5 check, queen takes F7 check. It's forcing mate, queen G6 check, queen H5 check, queen takes his mate. So yeah, fun stuff. So rook A6 was tried. We have now H takes, F takes, rook C7. Rook a1 check. If queen d8 here, queen d3 is very powerful. So we still have mating implications like we've seen before actually. Queen takes, there's knight g5 check. And if king h8, queen takes g6, threatening, mate on h7, this is like going to be mating, for example, like that. Okay, so let's go back here. If queen takes e7, knight f6 check, bishop takes, e takes, queen takes d7 check, and this is mating. So, okay, rook a1 check, tried, we have king f2. King h2 is also good. Queen d8 looks scary for queen h4, but this is also good after queen d3. If queen takes e7, what would be the key move here for 10 points? Knight f6 check would stop any queen h4 check. And here, e takes, queen takes d7 check, queen e8 check. This ends up mating. So that is really quite strong after queen d3 here. Knight f6 check is the key move. Not rook takes d7, queen h4 check, and black has big advantage. So anyway, king f2 though is another way of playing it, putting the king in a safe way. Queen d3 now. We have queen takes e7. If queen takes c7, knight g5 check. If h takes, queen takes g6 check, this is just mating. If king h8, knight f7 check, queen takes g6 is checkmate. So queen takes e7, we have rook takes d7, knight f6 check is also strong, this position e takes, and then queen takes, this is also very strong, checkmating. But our rook takes, we have queen h4 check, king f3, queen h5 check, king g3, and this ends the game. In fact, there's no more checks, and knight f6 is happening. Say rook d1, that's just desperate. Knight f6 check, queen takes b5. We don't even have to take the rook on d1, we just go for the checkmate here. So rook takes, forget taking the rook, queen b8 check, and we just get a checkmate. Pretty crushing stuff. So king g3, is pretty hopeless. How does black actually parry the key threats here? It's very difficult. If king h8, rook d8 check, queen d7, big threat of knight f6 here. So g5, knight f6 check, queen d3, rook d7 check. Look how the light squares are being used in all of this. So queen d6 would be checkmate there. So a fascinating game showing this concept of the bishop takes knight. Usually, well, in the past there was a great emphasis on having the bishop pair, but this variation shows that actually we can give up the bishop pair and play on like the light squares here, giving up the dark square bishop play on the light squares, giving up light square bishop play on the dark squares. So the light squares pretty good, but there are some interesting possibilities showing how c5 in a lot of cases was not particularly good to play for c5, to try and do something with this bishop to undermine e5 more strongly. But and when it was actually played, it was a nice advantage. It was actually not the right time still for c5. b4 should have been played, then c5. So interesting game with the knights getting really active after c5 here. So the knight pair, having the knight pair has the advantage on the light squares in particular, away from the dark square bishop. And it was quite dangerous here in conjunction with moves like h5, which are a light square based attack. Great stuff. Okay, thanks very much. Hi all, I hope you enjoyed this free Magnus Carlsen lecture. I will be doing quite a few, in fact, because I'm working on a course about universal chess style with a lot of Magnus Carlsen game examples. So I hope you can actually support my channel indirectly by checking out my courses page at Kingscrusher TV. It has great discount codes quite often. So I have a number of courses I've been working on in the last few years. As you can see, I've been busy. Some of these have become Udemy bestsellers in the past or currently, like the Complete Beginner's Guide to Chess is a current bestseller. The Complete Guide to Chess Tactics was previously a Udemy bestseller. So I hope you can check out the courses, and there are free lecture offerings you can check out as well within these. If you really want to get an idea more about the course, you can also expand the course structure when you go and check out a course. So I hope you check out the Kingscrusher TV page, which has these great discount codes attached to all these links. So it's better than going to Udemy directly if you want chess courses, okay, at really affordable prices. So thanks again. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.